For me, it's really hard to pinpoint what exactly pushed me into activism. I definitely think that my experience being undocumented is what got me active in trying to access the things that were being closed in front of me. But as I moved to do that, I came to understand and learn from other people's experiences that I wasn't alone. And so I actually think that it was the experience of realizing that it wasn't my experience alone in this world that really solidified for me the need to be active and the need to know why it is that the world is the way that it is, and why it is that people are closing doors into our communities, and who these people are, because they have a name and they might be sitting behind desks, but they have names and addresses and reasons for closing all of these doors to our communities. And I think that, you know, not being able to access college institutions, not being able to work, not being able to access healthcare, hospitals, definitely is what made me active. It wasn't until in the midst of being active for reforms like the DREAM Act that my brother was placed in deportation proceedings, my younger brother, at the age of 18, due to policies like stop and frisk, and the deportation machinery that has been built in this country, that I came to realize just how the magnitude of the system that we're up against, and how it really moves to ruin people's lives mercilessly for profit. But in all of that, my brother's deportation was defeated through a community campaign, through a community effort. And I think that that was the experience that solidified for me the need for social change, and for being a revolutionary, for understanding that this is a systematic problem, and that it's millions of us, and that it is the majority of us who are under it. So I think for me, it's a culmination of experiences that have introduced me to certain work and exposed me to the work of others, to realize that it's all of our experiences collectively that are moving the world and that are moving our people to really find justice in all of this.
Safety is a state of mind we can't even ensure for each other, you know? So what is it that we do then to sustain ourselves? And I think that was a big piece I thought about with this. And then finally, I think the other thing about being a woman organizer is that I think when men lead, they primarily bring themselves. You know, they're like especially I think with cis men, it's like you'll see them and you'll know them and you won't know anything else. But I think when women lead, we bring our families. And I think what I'm so struck by is that, you know, every one of us here, when we talked about ourselves and our stories, we talked about someone in our family who's impacted. And I guarantee you at any of the movement events that we've had, you'll see our mother, you see our brother, you see our sisters, you'll see our fathers, because it's the unit of the family is so much nurtured in our leadership. And I think that's why it's critical to center those who are the most impacted by cis trans patriarchy, cis and transphobic heteropatriarchy, to have those voices centered, because then we all are present. And I feel like that's what I think is missing. And I think that's what we bring to the table.
I want to say first, some people need to stop putting their own agenda. That's a big problem when we lose a loved one. People come in and they pretend that they want to help us, but they have their own agenda. What does that look like? It doesn't look good, and it's bad, because we in a state already that we can't function properly, and then we see people coming that say they want to help us. We in a dark hole already. We can't see, and then everybody that comes to us that's supposed to be helping us, we welcome them, because we don't know, because we in this dark room and we can't see. So everybody that comes and says we want to help, we gravitate to them, thinking that they're really there to help us. But little by little, when we come into that dark apartment, we start to see who people really are. But it do takes a long time to see, because we have all this stuff we have to deal with. We have to deal with funerals. We have to deal with, in my case, I had to deal with another little boy, you know, and people come in, oh, I want to help you, I'm there for your family, and they're really not. They're only there to say, well, I was with Romali's call when he first got killed. We was protesting all together. No, don't do that. You know, be real. Be real. If you're there to help us, be there to help us. Not to pretend that you want to help us when you have your own agenda. And that's a big problem when it comes to fact that lose loved one.
People coming into this with their own agenda and dividing us, you know, dividing us with their own agendas. They come and act like they're so compassionate and want to help and say, can you come to this, or can you do this, or whatever. We don't miss it. We want you to be involved, but really, it's not about us, the person. Our story is about our name and what we've been through, and they want to make money. They want to, you know, just like around the world, this lady patent I Can't Breathe. You know, that's supposed to be, you know, something so sacred that, you know, the family, you know, we can't cope with that, but it's something that we have to do because
Someone trademarked that?
yes,
Really?
right before I went to court to go file charges. I mean, not charges. File the paperwork to patent it. A white lady, already did it. Out of state. She already did it, so it's nothing that my family can do about it. You know, it's just words, but it still means something to us. So these people come in and take what's so valuable to us and make a franchise out of it. You know, want to sell T-shirts, want to sell buttons, want to sell this, and give none of the proceeds to the family. I mean, it shouldn't be about money. That's the whole thing in this movement. A lot of people have different agendas, and everything is about money and getting their name and, you know, making a name for themselves. And it's really supposed to be supporting the family and doing what you feel is right. That's why, you know, I say people that, you know, that's going to protest with me, protest with a purpose. And why are you out here today? Not because you was there when my father, you know, if things happen with my father or whatever. Why are you here today? What do you have to say to me? What do you want? Because I'm not just falling and getting in bed with anyone. I've been tricked, fighting it. I wanted to do like a meet and greet. Instead of people coming out to my protest and just, you know, shouting stuff, I wanted to do a meet and greet. You know, we meet each other, we read each other, we keep in contact, we, you know, with the text messages and social media or whatever. And someone burned down my father's memorial. So I was very upset, and I called immediate action, and a whole bunch of people came out to support me to rebuild it. Because I was like, that's not going to discourage me. There was a lady out there pretending to be a protester from out of town. You know, she wanted to talk to me or whatever. I was talking with her. And she was asking weird questions. And it didn't come into my mind, but it was in the back of my mind. Come to find out she was a reporter and had me recorded undercover. And I woke up the next day and my face is all over the news saying bad things about how sharp them. I'm like, whoa. You know, but these are the type of people that you need to keep an eye out because they come in with their own agendas and exploit your opponent. So.
It is a war out there. It is a war in every single way possible. The people are dying, and if it's not directly on the streets from interactions with police officers, it's because of lack of access to healthcare. It's because of lack of access to food, to housing, to the resources that are basic needs for each and every one of us. And that the inaccessibility comes from very few people making money off of selling this accessibility and off of charging us to be able to enter these spaces and live through the resources that they control. And you know, I think that a lot of my work is based on the idea that we all have the capacity to know and to understand how it is that we have gotten here. So on my day-to-day basis with the International Socialist Organization, with the Raza Youth Collective, with the Yaya Network, in spaces like this, it's creating platforms, creating spaces where we are all having political discussions because our lives are political. And that's not necessarily because we are politicians, but because politicians are playing politics. People are playing politics, and we are living the consequences. Our life stories have become the scorecards that they are keeping, and the receipts that they have in their pockets off of the contracts that they have in detention centers, with the companies that make the weapons. As soon as I started to unravel my own story, I started to realize that it was one little thread in a blanket of experiences, and covering, structures that they want to keep hidden and that we must always be uncovering. And so on my day-to-day basis, this means forming platforms like these ones to raise awareness on the campaigns, getting out in the community, setting up a table. You have freedom of association. No one can take that away from you. Set up a table, talk to your neighbors. On a day-to-day basis, it means reading my history, talking to my mom about it, meeting up in buffet shops, meeting up in Colombian restaurants and talking about the war on drugs and how it started. And then it just means connecting people on these personal stories, but realizing that there is so much inside of us and there's so much in all of our histories, and that we have the right to know about it and we have the capacity to understand all of it, and that then it is that we can have the strength. I am actually, people say that leaders are fearless. I am so afraid. I am so afraid of the world. And it is the fear that it's not going to get better.
So I think for me, it's probably a lifelong journey, particularly because I grew up Dalit. And Dalit is the term for the people who were formerly seen as untouchable. And we were called untouchable because we were spiritually defiling to other people. And growing up and knowing that my people were sentenced to death because of this system, there's a choice you have to make to survive. And that choice is, do I take what the state is saying about my people, or do I create a freedom place in my imagination that allows me to take that from the imaginary into the real world with whatever tool I have, whether it's my mind, my body, my spirit, or my stories? And I think that was a big part of my journey to being an activist around caste apartheid. And what's crazy about how deep the violence around caste is that when you think about the caste system, it's one of the oldest systems of oppression in the world, and it affects over 200 million people, which is about the size of 5 South Africas. So while the world stood with the anti-apartheid movement, nobody talks about the caste system. And what struck me was, in terms of my Dalit brothers and sisters, I would hear in our personal networks on Facebook, on Twitter, on WhatsApp, the bodies that were part of what happened when you crossed caste apartheid. So I would see almost on a daily basis, bodies hung from trees, peoples and families chopped up, thrown into fields, and then subtler forms of discrimination at work. And the pain and the struggle that comes with having to live in a society that doesn't see you as whole. Mm-hmm. So what was striking to me, that in the project that I've been working on, Dalit Women Fight, I've been working with a movement of women who basically said, no, you can take away our land, you can take away our lives, you can even take away our limbs, but you can't take away our dignity. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, I feel like that is so much of this, the resonance that I've heard with all the women that I'm sharing the panel with, but also with all of the people in this room. I feel like part of what was really that initiation for change was this idea that no matter what the state says, our dignity is a place within which we can fight forward. And I can't say that it was like one day you wake up brave. You know, it's almost what it is that courage is a reiterative process where every day you face that pain, you face that question that you might be extinguished or someone you love may be facing that same fate, but you find a way to collectively move forward because you get sustenance from each other or sustenance from a memory. Something allows you to pull forward. And I think that is actually the opposite of state violence. It's hope and it's life and it's our community that we build together. So I think that's what's so profound about the collective here that brought us all together, because this is another one of those hubs of hope and hubs of origination, you know.
I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think that one of the things that often gets in our way is our fear of making mistakes when we work together, and just not even working together. You know, like people come out to actions and people sign petitions and things like that, and then like sign their name onto things, but don't do the work of meeting you daily, of checking in with you and being like, okay, how do we build this together? How do we get closer and closer to getting rid of the Department of Homeland Security? So that, like how really, like, how do we do that if we're not working together? If we're just chipping away in this one little corner and someone else is on the other side chipping away at the other corner and we don't really see each other, and then we're making like minor dents, and then the system can accommodate that. I think we talk a lot about you know what your model of social change is. I think you really need to think about what your model of power is. And power isn't a zero-sum game. So it's like if Uruj has power, then all of a sudden I don't, But I think that power, like life, is infinite, and in many ways, I think we are so much stronger and united than we are in our individual selfhood. And that, just even in hearing like my fellow panelists' stories today, I feel so nourished and I don't feel alone the way that I think violence is meant to make you feel. Violence makes you feel smaller. It disrupts me, and so when you have to rebuild yourself, because there's nothing more meaningless than like the loss of a child or the loss of a father. And I think that it's intentional to do that, to disrupt our ability to create the selfhood that we need to propagate, to have dignity, to have family. So there is no greater act of self-determination than to restore meaning in our resistance. So I feel like part of my answer to that question is that learning from each other, building with each other, fighting with each other is one of the things that I feel like we often don't make time for because we're so working like in this survival mode. But I think survival is a long game, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And part of that is knowing that when we take the time out to build with each other, we're investing in our movement and we're investing in our survival. So that's a big piece for me. And the other thing is I think the practice of self-care. I feel like in the face of like immediate violence, it feels so selfish to think about the things that you might need to nurture yourself at that moment. But I remember having like an intervention done to me, being like, you're not going to be able to
make the long game. Yeah.
The last thought that I want to leave everyone with is that change is possible. That the reason why we're here is because things have changed in the system that have made it so that we could be here. And so we need to keep that in mind, that every time we feel like we that the system is so big, that the roots go way too deep, there are people that fought before us that have won change. And we can maintain it, and we can make our living conditions better. And we are going to continue like surviving and thriving until we totally transform the world so that it can be the world that we want. So I think that spirit of resistance, I think we need to like invigorate that in us and keep each other